Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about some potential league-winning running backs for fantasy football in 2021. Inside of this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 running backs that I love based upon where they are going in drafts right now, based upon their current ADP. Now, this video could obviously have some big changes by the time we are drafting in late August or early September, because average draft position changes as the offseason goes on. So make sure that you check out the update version of this video that will probably be on my channel sometime in August. So if you want to make sure that you watch that video as well, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below, because not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. The reason why average draft position changes so much throughout the offseason is because of the hype that hits certain players. A player might be going at pick like 180 right now, and then 3 news blurbs come out of training camp and they shoot up to be a 10th round pick, and then eventually people realize that this probably isn't going to work in preseason and they fly back down. Injuries happen, which severely changes the average draft position. Quarterback changes on teams, all of that end up affecting a player's average draft position. So that is very important to note when you're talking about why you like a player at their current average draft position, is the fact that it could end up changing. And the thing is, you probably may not like a certain player, right? You may say, hey, I hate drafting this running back at this pick, but if you were to get them at a discount a couple of rounds later, maybe a round later, you would feel a lot more comfortable drafting them. So that's why average draft position is baked so much into these videos, because it is very important in understanding the value of a player, because that is where they're going to be going around that area majority of times in drafts. So to kind of just get off this explanation, we're going to get into the first running back. So we begin with running back of the New Orleans Saints, Alvin Kamara, underdog ADP running back number 4 overall for pick 4.4 on underdog. Last season, Alvin Kamara had a hell of a season that was bolstered by what would be described as a Christmas miracle in that game up against the Minnesota Vikings, where this guy scored so many touchdowns that it was actually crazy. He scored 6 total touchdowns in one game, being the number 1 running back on the week. Obviously 56.2 points in that matchup up against the Minnesota Vikings, where he completely just murdered them. That was one of the craziest performances I have seen out of a running back in a while, and that further boosted up his points total at the end of the season. But even without that game, Alvin Kamara was dominant last season with and without Drew Brees. But we're going to be talking about that a little bit later, the splits with Drew Brees versus without, because I think that is a big proponent as to why people are a little bit nervous about Alvin Kamara. So in 15 games, Mr. Kamara finished as running back number 1 in PPR, 1.5 PPR, as well as running back number 2 in standard, averaging 25.2 PPR points per game, 22.6 half PPR points per game, and 21 standard points per game. Meaning, from a points per game perspective, Mr. Kamara was running back 2 in PPR, 3.5 PPR, and running back number 4 in standard. Now, the reason why I feel like Alvin Kamara is a potential league-winning running back is because he's the only running back in the NFL who will be able to rival a Christian McCaffrey in the target number. The reason why Christian McCaffrey is so fucking good in fantasy football is because this guy on the ground just does the defenses dirty, and then you throw him the ball and he does the exact same thing. He's the perfect 1-2 punch at the running back position. He's 2 running backs at once. He's a first and second down running back, and then he's the pass catching running back on third down. That's why he's so fucking good, and that is why we can see a potential for Alvin Kamara to finish as the number 1 running back, because of how high the target number could be for him on a season. Last year, Alvin Kamara only had 187 carries, which is 12.5 per game, ranking 15th at running back, and he still was able to finish as the number 1 running back in PPR and half PPR, and that is because of the amount of targets he is getting per game. Having that extreme amount of targets is what's going to elevate you in PPR and half PPR. Guys can run for fucking 2,000 yards like Derrick Henry, and they're still not going to finish as the number 1 overall guy, because they are handicapped by the fact that the guy frankly just can't catch passes. His 107 targets turned into a grand total of 83 receptions, number 1 at the running back position, 756 receiving yards, number 1 at the running back position, 50.4 per game, as well as having 187 carries for 937 rushing yards, 21 total touchdowns. He even had 11 drops on the season, but it didn't seem to matter at all because he was still getting the ball dumped off to him 7 million times. So now we're going to talk about the discrepancy of with Drew Brees versus without, and why I think that at the end of this, after I explain these numbers, that the numbers don't even fucking matter because we're not talking about the same quarterback. So this is Drew Brees versus Taysom Hill, basically. So with Drew Brees, in 11 games, Alvin Kamara was averaging 25.91 half PPR points per game. With Mr. Taysom Hill in the lineup, 12.95 half PPR points per game. In PPR, 29.23 points per game with Drew Brees versus 14.2 without. In standard, 22.59 points per game with Drew Brees versus 11.7 without. Why is this? This is because there's an extreme uptick in targets with Drew Brees in the lineup. 8.27 with Drew Brees versus 4 without. 6.64 receptions with Drew Brees versus 2.5 without. 0.45 receiving touchdowns per game versus 0 without Drew Brees. And the receiving yards obviously were up as well. 64.09 per game versus 12.75 without Drew Brees. Even with an uptick of rushing attempts with Taysom Hill under center, he was still less productive in the rushing game. 12.45 rushing attempts with Drew Brees versus 12.5 without Drew Brees. 1.18 rushing touchdown per game versus 0.75 without Drew Brees, and 63.64 rushing yards per game versus 59.25 without Drew Brees. So why does this happen? This is because Taysom Hill, instead of dumping the ball off, instead of handing it to Alvin Kamara, he'd rather just do it himself because he is this fucking Swiss Army knife of a player that can do everything. He thinks he's a big man, but simply he's not that guy. And this season, he's not going to be that guy. Famous Jameis Winston is going to be the starting quarterback. So I want the people that put this screenshot that I have taken, that I'm talking about in this video with the split of Drew Brees versus without Drew Brees, you take those fucking statistics, you dribble them around, and you throw them backwards into the garbage dude perfect style, because frankly, those numbers don't fucking matter. I show them to you because of how crazy the discrepancy is with Drew Brees versus with Taysom Hill. But Taysom Hill is not going to be the starting quarterback. If you tell me that Jameis Winston is going to be complete and utter dog shit and that Taysom Hill is going to play like half the season, then I am running clear away from Alvin Kamara like my name is Forrest Gump, running cross country, turning back around and running back the other way, because then I am so nervous, because Taysom Hill takes a lot of Alvin Kamara's upside and just completely murders it in the back of a Denny's. Alvin Kamara is one of the best running backs in the NFL because of his immense receiving ability. He's a guy that you simply cannot cover with a linebacker. You need to literally put a corner on Alvin Kamara in order to stop him. You could put him as the slot wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints and let Latavius Murray get a bunch of touches, and Alvin Kamara would still be touching up that defense because of how good of a wide receiver he is. He is such a good running back for fantasy football, but with Taysom Hill, his abilities are completely strangleholded. So I believe that Jameis is going to be the guy. I believe that Jameis Winston showed some talent last season when they put him in the game. They put him in the playoff game. He threw an absolute dime. He looked better than Drew Brees, and he is a much better quarterback than Taysom Hill. So my belief is that Jameis Winston is going to be the guy, and that Alvin Kamara is going to see an insane amount of targets in 2021 to potentially let you win your 2021 fantasy football league. And at running back number 4, a guy that can finish as running back number 1, I just love that value. Next up, we got another player that definitely has some confusion on his team, just like Alvin Kamara, even though it's pretty obvious that Jameis Winston is going to be the quarterback. In this case, we don't know who the fuck the quarterback is going to be, and that is running back of the Green Bay Packers, Mr. Discount Double Checks brother, Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers, underdog ADP, running back number 11. I said they're brothers because they have the same first name, even though that's not technically how that works. Aaron Jones, for 2 seasons in a row, has been beating down defenses relentlessly, and going into last season, a lot of people were undervaluing Aaron Jones because he scored all these touchdowns, and and his points were elevated by the amount of touchdowns that he was scoring. That's what the people were telling you. But what I was telling you was that it doesn't matter how many touchdowns the guy scores. If he regresses in touchdowns, he's still going to finish as a top 10 running back, and that is exactly what Aaron Jones did in 14 games, finishing as running back 5 in all formats, that being PPR, half PPR, as well in standard, averaging 18.5 PPR points per game, 16.8 half PPR points per game, and 15.1 standard points per game, meaning from points per game perspective, Aaron Jones was running back 5 in PPR, 5.5 PPR, and number 6 in standard. Now, the fact that he's going at running back number 11 definitely has baked in the fact that Mr. Aaron Rodgers may not be their quarterback, and that is going to be a discussion that's probably going to be happening all offseason. I thought that Aaron Rodgers would be traded. I thought that he'd sign some type of big deal with the Green Bay Packers, get buddy-buddy with the organization, and then everything will be fine. But that has just not happened yet. So we don't know necessarily what is going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, but my bet is that he doesn't end up leaving. He doesn't end up going to go do Jeopardy. He doesn't end up as the fucking starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos, and he ends up as the guy in Green Bay, just like he's been his whole career, aside from when Mr. Brett Favre was starting for the Green Bay Packers. So in that assumption, going at ADP running back number 11, he's a steal. But Nick, he's going to rise up the ADP board. I understand. Maybe he'll go to running back 8. Maybe he'll go to running back 6. Maybe running back 7, but I have him listed as my running back number 6. And going at number even 8, that is an extreme value play for Aaron Jones, who has just shown consistency 2 years in a row. Underdog ADP right now, 15.5. So he's a second round pick, and he could easily be a top 5 running back. Now, he's not a guy that's going to get an unholy amount of targets. He still finished top 10 in targets, 62, which is about 4.4 per game, as well as having 46 receptions, 12th highest at the running back position. But just getting some amount of targets gives you so much more upside than a guy who's not going to be seeing all that many targets, having 347 receiving yards on the season, 13th highest at running back. He also had 201 carries, 10th highest at running back, for a grand total of 1,104 rushing yards, ranking 4th highest at the running back position. And it's not necessarily because this guy is a master at juking out the defenders. Only a 22.3% juke rate on the season, ranking 25th at the running back position, but he's mainly good for these evaded tackles. 55 evaded tackles on the season, 14th highest at the running back position, as well as having 8 breakaway runs on the season, 12th highest at running back, and his yards per carry number just being so strong with 5.5 yards per carry. And he is on such a great offense. They don't have the greatest of offensive lines, but if Aaron Rodgers is under center, you better believe that Aaron Jones has the potential to actually be a top 5 running back, and he is going outside of the top 10 right now. There's not too many changes to this Green Bay offense, unless, of course, Aaron Rodgers leaves. If Jordan Love is in, then I'm still drafting him at running back number 11 because I think he still has a lot of upside, but his touchdowns are certainly limited. Last year, he scored a grand total of 11 total touchdowns, 7th highest at running back, and it went down from 2019 where he scored 19 total touchdowns, but people thought that it was going to be an unholy level of regression, that he was going to go from 19, drop down to like 6, and he was going to shit the bed for fantasy football. But the fact is that he doesn't need 15, 16 touchdowns to finish as a top-end running back because all of the numbers are so good. The targets, the receptions, the rushing yards, everything looks well for Aaron Jones, and you shouldn't see too much of a difference in 2021 unless, of course, Aaron Rodgers is gone. So the only legitimate argument I see against drafting Aaron Jones right now is the fact of the confusion with Aaron Rodgers. If you have another argument against Aaron Jones, please let me know, because I think that touchdown argument I've kind of just defeated. I fucking stabbed that argument in the chest like I was Tyrod Taylor's doctor. So next up on the docket, we got running back formerly of Christian McCaffrey's team, the Carolina Panthers, now the Atlanta Falcons, underdog ADP running back number 22, underdog ADP overall pick 50.7, Mike Davis of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, we are about halfway into this video. So if you guys have ended up enjoying throughout this discussion of my potentially league-winning running backs, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below, because not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win that 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And if you haven't already, please make sure to hit that like button at all. It boosts my video up the algorithm so that more people can see it. It helps me out a ton. Mike Davis of the Atlanta Falcons he's not a sleeper, right? Because a sleeper goes much later than Mike Davis, but people are certainly sleeping on Mike Davis. Mike Davis last year, after Christian McCaffrey went down, this dude fit like a glove. Shout out to O.J. Simpson. This guy fit perfectly into this offense. It was like Christian McCaffrey didn't even leave. Now, obviously, Mike Davis isn't Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, he's not going to put up these sick statistics that Christian McCaffrey is able to put up every single year. Even when he's hurt, he's still putting up these big numbers. Last year, the guy was averaging like 30 points per game, and he played in like 4 total games, and he was just so fucking good when he played. But Mike Davis was still able to put up these grade A performances, and he's not Christian McCaffrey. In 15 games, Mike Davis was running back 12 in PPR, 15.5 PPR, running back 18 in standard, averaging 13.8 PPR points per game, 11.8 half PPR points per game, and 9.8 standard points per game. Meaning, from a points per game perspective, Mike Davis was running back 21 in PPR, 27.5 PPR, and running back number 30 in standard. But you have to keep in mind that those points per game are averaging in 2 games that Mike Davis played with Christian McCaffrey. So we're going to look at the game splits with and without Christian McCaffrey. So with Christian McCaffrey, Mike Davis played in 2 games versus 12 without. In half PPR, he was averaging 8.85 points per game with McCaffrey versus 13.44 without, 12.1 PPR points per game with Christian McCaffrey versus 15.36 without, and 5.6 standard points per game versus 11.53 without. Why is this? He actually had a downgrade in receptions and targets with Christian McCaffrey versus without. He was averaging 6.5 receptions per game with McCaffrey versus 3.83 without, and 7 targets per game with Christian McCaffrey versus 4.67 without. But he was actually a lot more successful in the rushing game, obviously, having 1 rushing attempt with McCaffrey in the lineup versus 13.58 per game without Christian McCaffrey, 53.17 rushing yards per game versus 2 without Christian McCaffrey, as well as half of a rushing touchdown per game, 0.5 rushing touchdowns per game versus 0 with Christian McCaffrey. So technically, without Christian McCaffrey, which would make sense, overall, Mike Davis was better. I understand that he had a downgrade in targets and receptions, but his numbers were still higher overall in every single format. So now, Mike Davis moves on from the stranglehold of being stuck behind Christian McCaffrey, and now he is that guy in Atlanta. Who do the Atlanta Falcons have behind Mike Davis that is going to take his job? Think about it. Try and think. No one. There is no one behind Mike Davis that should reasonably be able to take over for Mike Davis and become the guy. Obviously, if Mike Davis was to get hurt, then he would end up losing the job. That is basically how it works everywhere. You know, you get hurt and then someone takes your fucking job. But he would get it back the second he was healthy, because to me, not a single player behind Mike Davis is worthy of even sniffing this guy's jockstrap, of even thinking that they could be Mike Davis. And he's going at such a strong discount for a guy that, in my opinion, can no problem be a top 12 running back, because of how good he is in the receiving game, again, which is so important for fantasy football. His stats last year for Mike Davis were quite amazing. He had 70 targets on the season, 5th highest at the running back position, 59 receptions, 4th highest at running back. He had 165 carries for 642 rushing yards, as well as 8 total touchdowns. And this is not even with being the starter. He obviously, like I said, didn't even start 2 of those games because Christian McCaffrey was the guy in that offense. And now he is injected onto a team, like I said, where he is going to be the guy. I understand that being a running back of the Atlanta Falcons may give people the heebie-fucking-jeebies, because last year everyone tried to draft Todd Gurley for some reason, even though I was preaching to the choir to everyone not to draft Todd Gurley because of his knee, but people drafted him, and now they're pissed off, and they might want to fade Mike Davis for that reason. But look back. Devontae Freeman, when Devontae Freeman was healthy, Atlanta can use a running back. I understand, Nick, that was a different time, a different head coach, and I get that. But that means, what that tells me at least, is that Matt Ryan is willing to dump the ball off. He used to dump the ball off to Devontae Freeman. He dumped the ball off to Ito Smith in the past. So Mike Davis can clearly take over as the running back one and fill that role that Todd Gurley just couldn't fill. Mike Davis can get it up. Todd Gurley, he needs that Viagra because his knee is fucked up, okay? Mike Davis is going to be the guy in this offense. I've said it a million times in this video, and he is going to produce. And don't be surprised at all when Mike Davis finishes really high and his ADP continues to move up, because I'm thinking right now his ADP is going down. He's actually gone back in the draft from 49 to 50 in the last week, but I think that once people catch on how good Mike Davis's situation is in Atlanta, that his ADP is going to start rising. So if you're drafting best ball drafts right now, make sure you snag Mike Davis before obviously people start drafting him. I understand the biggest argument against Mike Davis is probably the fact that he's 29.1 years old, and most running backs don't just start being good at 28 years old, but fuck it, I don't care how old he is. Tom Brady is as old as a barbarian at this point. This guy's been playing for 7,000 years. He's been playing since the game was invented, and he's still balling out. So take age out of it. I think Mike Davis is still going to be able to do it. But Nick, that's such a stupid argument because Tom Brady is like, he eats just avocado toast every day. I understand. I guess that's not the greatest of arguments, but at 29 years old, you're not washed or something. So I don't really see too much of an argument against hammering down on drafting Mike Davis at running back number 22. Next up, we got a running back going around the range of Mike Davis. His name also starts with an M. That's that bitch, Myles Gaskin. Carol Gaskin, running back of the Miami Dolphins, current underdog ADP 59.0, running back number 24 off the board. Now, going into last season, we had no idea that Myles Gaskin would be the running back that he was. We thought it was going to be the 1-2 punch of Jordan Howard, of Matt Breida. You draft both of them in fantasy. In one league, you draft one. In the other league, you draft the other. And then one of them will probably pan out, right? Because the Dolphins' offense won't be complete and utter dick cheese. And then what happens is that Matt Breida fucking sucks. Jordan Howard can't even get into the end zone, even though he's built like a wrecking ball. And then Coach Brian Flores just realizes, let's just put in Myles Gaskin. He's a 7th round pick out of Washington, but we'll play Myles Gaskin. And then Myles Gaskin comes out the gate, like, just amazing. I didn't even know I'm a Dolphins fan, and I had no idea that Myles Gaskin was this good. And I don't think anyone had any idea that Myles Gaskin was this good because he was a 7th round pick, like I said, in 2019. He starts off the season looking far better than Breida and far better than Jordan Howard, to where he just basically took over the job as the starting running back a couple weeks in the season. You can probably say that he was the starter by week 2 up against Buffalo, but I think he really started being that guy around week 5 up against the San Francisco 49ers. He even had an explosive week 16 up against the Las Vegas Raiders, where he was the number 2 running back on the week. Now, I understand that Myles Gaskin is not necessarily a workhorse running back because Brian Flores is not just going to give the reins to Myles Gaskin to run freely, right? Myles Gaskin is going to have to be splitting the load a little bit with Salvon Ahmed, which is very interesting because him and Salvon Ahmed were college teammates at Washington, which is pretty cool. But what you have to understand is even if he is not technically going to be a workhorse running back, not many NFL running backs are workhorses, right? You got your Alvin Kamara, you got your Christian McCaffrey, your Saquon Barkley, all of those guys that are true, complete, and utter workhorses who basically don't get off the field at all during the game. I understand, obviously, other running backs are going to come in for them, but they barely get off the field. Mr. Salvon Ahmed will be involved in this offense with Myles Gaskin, but I do think that being the lead running back on a Miami Dolphins team that I personally expect to look so much better, and with such a strong defense, you know what they're going to do in the game? If Tua actually plays fucking good and is as good as he should be, then they should be up in games. The defense is going to lock down the opposing offense, and what they're going to do late in the game is hand the ball off. And say, hey, Myles, want to give you 7,000 touches at the end of the game. You hand the ball off a million times, you walk up the field, game's over, and Myles Gaskin gets a bunch of garbage time points because he's rushing the ball. In 10 games last year, Myles Gaskin was running back 28 PPR, 27.5 PPR, and running back 27 in standard, averaging 16.4 PPR points per game, 14.4 half PPR points per game, and 12.3 standard points per game. And he is the perfect example of a running back as to why you bring up the points per game numbers, because from a points per game perspective, he finished as running back 13 in PPR. He finished as running back 12.5 PPR and 14 in standard. But on the end of the season, he's finishing outside of the top 25. It's because he didn't play all of those games. It's because he was injured and he basically was not the starter. But once he became the starter, once he was healthy, this guy was on a track to be a top 10 running back. And I understand that you don't just take the numbers from last season and say that's exactly what Myles Gaskin is going to do, because that's stupid. Things end up changing. But what isn't going to be changing is Myles Gaskin's dominant role as the number one running back in this backfield. Like I said, Ahmed will be used in this offense because Brian Flores, I don't think, will trust Gaskin enough to give him that number one role. But I think that the draft going this way, the Dolphins didn't take a running back in the first round, which I thought was possible. And Javonte Williams got sniped from them in the second round. So I'm not even sure if that's what actually happened. If the Dolphins were even eyeing Javonte Williams, but he got picked one pick before them in the second round, so they had to stick with Myles Gaskin. So I'm not sure if this is a vote of confidence that, hey, Myles Gaskin is the guy for the future, or if he's not. But who gives a fuck? Because fantasy football, when you're talking about redraft, this is a one-year game. This isn't how good is Myles Gaskin 3 years from now, because I don't care how good Myles Gaskin is 3 years from now. I care how good Myles Gaskin is this year. And let me tell you that he's going to be the running back one here in Miami, and he's going to get a lot of touches. And if the Dolphins' offense is good, like I said, there's no reason that Gaskin doesn't have top 15 potential. He's easily a top 20 running back, in my opinion, if he's able to stay healthy. And he's going at 24, so he's definitely going at a pretty solid discount here, probably because of the fact that this guy just has no, name behind him, right? No one knew who the fuck Myles Gaskin was until this season, whereas the running backs going ahead of him, people know who they are, so that's kind of why a lot of fantasy football, especially in normal leagues, right? You're just drafting with fucking Jenny from accounting, with Joe from HR. Those guys and gals, they don't watch football like you do, right? You probably watch every fucking game because you're watching a video on fantasy football in July. So you know about these players, but they don't. So that's the big bonus in drafting now as well in best ball leagues, because, well, not really in best ball leagues, right? Because in best ball, these guys are sharp. They're drafting with you right now. But your friends, your workers, in July or in August, in early September, they still might not know who Myles Gaskin is, and you just got a sneaky pick because he doesn't have that name value yet, but you better believe if he provides value again this season, he will be a household name by 2022. Last season, his numbers were quite solid: 142 carries, 47 total targets on the season for a grand total of 41 receptions, 388 receiving yards, and 584 rushing yards with just 5 total touchdowns. I even forgot to mention that Myles Gaskin's offensive line is now going to be better, hopefully, right? The offensive line was so young last season, so as they grow, as they develop into these fine, dashing young men to protect Gaskin, to protect Tua, you're going to be pretty happy with Gaskin's output this year, especially if the offensive line looks a lot better. And final running back, we're going into the same division of the AFC East. Running back of the Buffalo Bills, Zack Moss, underdog ADP 104.7, underdog ADP running back 36. Now, much of the reason why people hate Zack Moss, this is actually a legitimately good reason that I understand. Right? I'm not going to argue against this. This guy just gets hurt all the time. He missed 3 games with a toe injury. In college, he suffered from injuries. Someone made a joke, I don't remember exactly who it was in the comment section, that Zack Moss probably got hurt playing fucking pee-wee football, and that wouldn't surprise me at all. But I think that even maybe he misses 3-4 games, right? You get him as running back 36, so you should be pretty happy with that if he is the running back 1 on the team, which he easily could be, because the argument for Zack Moss is basically that Devin Singletary is fucking terrible. And that Devin Singletary doesn't have what it takes to be the lead back in this team. That's why I like Zack Moss. He's going to get vultured by Josh Allen, but I think the vulture argument is a pretty lazy narrative because it happens on a lot of teams because nowadays, guess what? The running backs are good at, or the quarterbacks, my mistake, are good at running the ball. That's the new breed of quarterback. The breed of quarterback that's dying is the motherfucker who stands there in the pocket for like 10 seconds, not 10 seconds, obviously, right? Because if you're standing there for 10 seconds, you're going to get murdered. There's no way you can stand there for 10 seconds in the NFL, but they just stand there with the ball in their hand. They're just sitting there moving a little bit, but that's not what quarterbacks do nowadays, except for like Tom Brady and a couple guys, the old heads. What quarterbacks do now is they run the ball. That's why you have a Lamar Jackson. That's why you have a Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen has a great arm as well, but he can run the ball. Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Pat Mahomes can run the ball. Tua Tagovailoa can run the ball. Justin Herbert can run the ball. All these new age quarterbacks can run. Russell Wilson can run the ball. He's an old head, but he can run the ball. So that's what's going to happen in offenses nowadays. People are just going to get vultured. And it is what it is. You're going to lose some touchdowns. You may even lose a game because Josh Allen gets vultures fucking Zack Moss. But it can happen on any team. You're drafting J.K. Dobbins as running back 14, which I will do. He's going to get vultured too. So regardless of where you're drafting these players, they're going to end up getting vultured. In 13 games, Zack Moss finished as running back 46 in PPR, 45.5 PPR, and running back 43 in standard, averaging 7.8 PPR points per game, 7.3 half PPR points per game, and 6.7 standard points per game. Meaning from a points per game perspective, he was running back 53 in PPR, tied with Adrian Peterson and Cam Akers, 51.5 PPR, and 50 in standard, tied with Alex Collins. So Zack Moss didn't have a great season, obviously, because he's just stuck in a committee with Devin Singletary last season. But I believe that throughout this offseason, Zack Moss is going to take Devin Singletary and fucking force choke him like Darth Vader and throw him into the Rangar pit or whatever that thing, the Sarlacc pit, maybe that's what it's called, where that big-ass worm dude is in Star Wars. I used to know a lot more about Star Wars than I do now because, I don't know, I just kind of stopped caring about it after these movies have sucked complete ass, but that has nothing to do with this video. Basically, my thoughts are that Zack Moss is going to take Devin Singletary out back, take him out on the boat, have him look at some rabbits, and shoot him directly in the back of the head like Lenny in that book that we had to read in high school. So, those are my thoughts about Zack Moss. There's nothing really super in-depth to dive in there. It's just the fact that he should be better than that used condom in Devin Singletary, and that will elevate him to be the running back one on the team, and being a running back one on any team is beneficial, especially as running back 36 off the board. Zack Moss or Devin Singletary are honestly not that great of pass catchers, so I don't think that should really even, I don't know why they didn't draft a running back, if I'm being honest with you, but, you know, it is what it is. We're gonna ride with Zack Moss in 2021. So thank you guys for watching. This one was a bit longer of a video, probably because I went on a bunch of tirades. Let me know what you think about all of these running backs, and let me know if you have a great time. Happy almost 4th of July. Tomorrow's the 4th. To all of you Americans, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you guys are having a great day, regardless of where you live. A lot of people, I've seen people that live in Brazil in the comment section, people that live in the UK, that live in Canada, so people live all over the fucking place, and it's pretty cool, to be honest with you, that people like fantasy football that don't even live in the United States. I understand that shouldn't even be a weird concept, but it kind of is, because football is an American thing. It seems like a lot of people in England seem to hate the NFL, but I guess a lot of people like it now. So, you know, thank you guys for coming wherever you come from in this video. I deeply appreciate you watching all the way through this video. I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I apologize for getting it out a little bit late. Tomorrow's video should be relatively earlier in the morning. Happy 4th again to all you Americans. Happy Saturday, happy Sunday, happy weekend to you, regardless of where you live. Again, I love you guys. Thank you for everything. Make sure you stay safe this weekend, and make sure that you know that I love you deeply. Thank you. Very nice. I like. Have a nice rest of your guys' day. Goodbye. Stay safe.